Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Okay. I'm doing the class from my phone. Is it okay if I put my phone down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Because there is some problem with my internet at Wi-Fi. Okay. Sorry for that. We are going to do psychoanalytic or psychodynamic therapeutic interventions that we use for treatment in our dealings with patients. We call them clients. We don't call them patients. Okay. Just give me a second. Okay. So, for most people, psychoanalytic methods are always associated with Freud. When we talk about psychoanalysis, the only name that comes to mind is Freud, right? So, the
Yes.
majority of people that use psychoanalysis synonymously with uh, psychotherapy is also to some extent accepted because people understand Freud is the only psychologist that was into psychotherapy, but which is not true. Okay. I'm still working with my internet. Something wrong. So the therapeutic method Freud used was based on different models. The theoretical models that he has referred to are used for different treatment options that we have for clinical intervention in psychology. He talks about basic human drives. What do you mean by drive? Can anyone answer? What is a drive?
Sex and aggression.
Okay, these are the basic human drives that help us to stay alive. So, to stay alive, he has talked about again Eros and Thanatos. If you remember, you have studied about Eros and Thanatos. Eros is the life energy, and Thanatos is the death instinct. So, according to him, there are only two basic drives that are there to motivate all thoughts that we have and emotions and behavior. Okay, so aggression or death instinct, for example, serves just the goal of protecting us from attempting harm. Similarly, eros is which helps us to survive, and it combines with one drive that is there for us to look for, which is staying alive, protecting the ego, helping the person to socialize. All the positivities that you observe is driven by eros. Okay. So the structural and topographical models of personality he has talked about. For the structural model, he has talked about, he is a Sigmund Freud. Okay. So we're talking about Freudian psychology, which can be used in therapeutic interventions that we use for clinical psychology. So the structural model that he uses for understanding personality, he uses three things: id, ego, and superego. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So the structural model talks about id, ego, and superego. Id is an important part of our personality because it is there since you are born. The id desires are basic desires which doesn't care for any principle that is driving them. It is driven by the pleasure seeking principle. Those who have these desires, they want to gratify their needs immediately. Immediate gratification of needs is very important for them. So it is there when the person is born. As we grow, we try to come to reality and we want to balance. For example, if you are also in the dire need of eating something immediately that you see in the sweet shop or something, you don't do that. You try to see the reality there. You go there. You, if you have money or not, you check. Then you eat a sweet by buying. So Eid will, what Eid will do? It will do, just go and pick up the sweet and have it. So it is not driven by reality principle, but ego is driven by reality principle. Okay. Then comes superego that he has talked about the levels of personality or the types of the structure of personality, the structural model that he has used for personality understanding. Superego is the ego which is driven by the conscience principle. It looks at the right and wrong, whether it is good for me to pick up something and eat, or people will feel bad about it. What should I do? Is it a good thing to eat sweets at this age? So many things the person will take into consideration and evaluate also, saying that I'm not okay, thinking that I'm not okay to do things immediately which gives me satisfaction, but I have to look at different options which will allow me to come to terms with the reality and also satisfy my hunger or satisfy my sweet tooth. So, superego keeps a balance between ego and id desires. So in a healthy person, the ego is the strongest which can satisfy of the need of the ego, id, and it will not upset the superego and it will take reality into consideration. So similarly, like the structural model, there is a topographical model also Freud has talked about. Freud says that the majority of what individuals we experience in our lives, the underlying emotions, the feelings, beliefs, and impulses, these are at a conscious level. So, the conscious level that he talks about is nothing but the tip of the iceberg. If we compare it to the iceberg, it is just the tip of the iceberg, and there are so many suppressed desires and feelings, emotions, and belief patterns, impulses which are not available to the individual. Even the individual is not aware of the existence of all these desires are buried under the iceberg. So that he divided again into pre-conscious and unconscious or non-conscious. Okay. So the stages of psychosexual development also has to be taken into consideration since we are talking about therapy. There will be different stages where the individual will go through different developmental stages, and according to the stage the different diseases will appear also. For example, eating disorder will appear typically to a teenage person more frequently than in an elderly person. Okay, so the age specific behavior he has talked about is put into different stages of sexual psychosexual development. He talks about 5 stages. You remember the stages? We can skip that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he has talked about oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage. Yes was for all. Oral, anal, phallic, and latency genital stage. Latency and genital stage. These are the stages he has talked about, and he has talked about the ego defense mechanisms also. Since ego is trying to maintain a balance between superego and id, so it has to use certain defense mechanisms to protect itself. So Freud has talked about different defense mechanisms also. So the defense mechanisms are denial. Remember a few of them? Do you remember a few of them?
Displacement, regression, repression, projection.
Sublimation, suppression, rationalization is the most often used defense mechanism, right? We always get into a rational explanation of our behavior when somebody is questioning us about our behavior, right? So it is the most often used defense mechanism, rationalization. Okay. Also intellectualization. In intellectualization, the people try to avoid unacceptable emotions by focusing on the intellectual aspects. So there is this object relations theory, the adaptation of psychoanalytic theory known as object relation theory started with the assumption that psychological life of the individual is created and through relation with other human beings. Thus, the object relations theorists they believe that the physical and psychological birth of the individual are distinguished separately. It is not one. Then he talks about the psychological development of a child. Um, it is a reciprocal process of adjustment between the child and the caretaker. If you remember John Bowlby, remember the name John Bowlby? After that, Mary Ainsworth also did a few experiments on the attachment that child has. Uh, the child learns to link itself with the caretakers um, freedom or the security that the caretaker, the primary caretaker, provides. Okay, remember that. Then the process of becoming a subject and identifying with the gender becomes a question. Since the initial identity is merged with the idea of the caretaker and its role in the child's development, the mother is normally the caretaker, okay? But sometimes the mother is absent and there is a primary caretaker who takes the charge of mother's duties. So, in such cases, what the child does is the child develops fear or anxiety. For example, separation anxiety. The child will have separation anxiety if the attachment is not very strong. Am I connected? I am doubting my internet, so I'm asking you frequently. Is it connected?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. There are just 7, 8 students today. So there are two aspects of child development that he talks about: the self identity and gender identity. In the normal traditional context of a nuclear family, we will be able to account for the contribution of the father to the separation or individuation process of the child that the child is developing. Individuation, self development, when it occurs, it slowly learns how to individually develop, separating itself from the primary caretaker and the mother. Slowly, that becomes his personality. Okay. So when you are going to give therapy also, you will try to see how strong or how weak was the attachment that the child had with the caretaker in the childhood, that it has developed into such anxious states in the child, in the developed child, adult. As a child, what was the relationship with the caretaker or the mother? So depending on that, you will be able to know which area needs attention in the life of the child. Okay. And there is this attachment theory that I was just telling you, how the attachment is responsible for the development of the individual person, that is slowly separating from the family members and developing its own personality. John Bowlby was the person who emphasized the real experiences of the child and the importance of external world in its development of personality. So, Holmes also is one person who suggested that the same is true about adults also, who stressed or threatened, maybe if they are insecurely attached, pathological secure based phenomena, which is called, like they will get into substance abuse or deliberate self harm or binge eating. Okay, these are the consequences when it is not securely based. Mary Ainsworth, as I was saying, that was back in the year 1978. It was critically important that she studied the strange situation in the experiments. These are all based on experiments that the researchers did to see the child's behavior when they are put in a different room or strange situation, or an unfamiliar situation, and how they are reacting to the unknown environment. And based on that, the theories were developed. So John Bowlby was one, and Mary Ainsworth also did the same. So the reaction to the separation leads the children like anxiously avoided or securely attached, whether they are securely attached or they are anxiously avoidantly attached, or they are resistant to the attachment style or disorganizedly oriented. Okay. So we have found a useful component that Freud has talked about and these researchers have talked about: the secure or the autonomous individual who values attachment relationships. And there is also this insecure, dismissing individual who will deny, devalue, or idealize or denigrate or will look down upon both current and past attachments. There is this Lacanian psychoanalytic theory also, which integrates psychoanalysis with some philosophical theories that Lacanian psychology has developed, but mostly it was popular in France and some parts of Latin America. So much emphasis is not given to this in the therapeutic intervention. And then we come to psychoanalytic psychodynamic therapy or psychodynamic therapy. So, what are the basic concepts of psychoanalytic therapy? As I was talking about the levels of mind, when you talk about therapy, you have to, since we are dealing with mental illnesses, so we have to deal with the mental illnesses and the origin of it and how to approach it, and from which perspective we are trying to look at the individual's life. That is also very important. So when you are doing this while talking to the client, there will be few things that you'll be looking for. So the basic tenets and concepts of psychoanalytic therapy is, he has talked about different levels of mind. One is unconscious. When you talk about unconscious, there are different knowledges. Uh, like there are two types of knowledges. Type of knowledge is declarative and procedural. Declarative memory and procedural memory, you remember? Then there is this explicit and implicit retrieval process also. Okay, so doesn't matter. You can go back, and when you find time, you just Google the terms. You will get the meaning, what they mean, and the kind of memory that I was talking about, the way the individual remembers the things that he is producing in front of the therapist about how he feels and how he deals with the life situations. That will be obvious that they are using a part of their childhood memories to describe a situation which is not there anymore, but it is still absorbed into their personality. That is why it is getting manifested at different stages where the child is not very favorable in such a, is not in a favorable situation. Okay, so subjectivity is a then comes subjectivity. Subjectivity is a psychodynamic perspective, and it emphasizes the importance of individual or personal meaning of events. What does that mean again? Psychodynamic clinicians, that they were interested in the person's development of personal meaning of events that the individual is explaining in which mode. That is also very important, that the psychiatrist takes into consideration, or the psychologist takes into consideration. The psychodynamic clinicians will be focused on what those form of cognitive behavior therapy tradition will be used. So they call them schema. Schema is, what is schema, you know? In social psychology, you must have studied. Okay, again, homework for you. I mean, when you are free, you can just go through these terms, like what is a schema, that because these are all that forms our personality according to different psychologists. We can talk about the schema that they form, that the clinician or the psychoanalytic practicing psychologist is using. Okay. Then comes transference. The methods that the person, the psychologist using on the person can be having transference. So the patient unconsciously relates to the therapist, as if the therapist is someone from their past. While talking to the therapist, they become very comfortable and they start acting out, which looks like they are acting from the past experiences. Although Freud has regarded transference as a simple displacement means it is not the real expression, but something which is vaguely expressed in a different way to hide the original experience. Okay. So displacement of a past relationship into the present. We now understand that the transference happens when the therapist is making the client comfortable and the client acts out something from the past. So there is this again one more term that he has used, resistance. Resistance means the patients will resist psychotherapy as they did in Freud's days. The discoveries of Freud was that the patient will always be ambivalent and they will be getting better and unconsciously oppose attempts to help them. They don't deny that they don't need help, but they will be resistant to change. They will do something, they will talk about something else, they will not answer directly to the questions that is asked to them. So, for example, a male patient experiences that the male therapist is critical. Hmm. So, he is reluctant to say much. So, when this the patient realizes, so they reveal a great deal about the relationship with his father. When the therapist also criticizes, it reminds the client about the father who was also criticizing them when they were a kid. Countertransference is also there, which he has talked about. The, it is the opposite of transference. So the therapist will identify with the client and start acting out scenes from his past. Countertransference is now very valuable. Uh, Earlier, it was dismissed as something which is interfering in the therapeutic relationship. Now, it is very considered as very valuable. It is a very valuable tool as in the therapy that is used. Is giving insight into the inner world of the therapist also to the client's world. Okay. So, what are the components of psychoanalysis and psychodynamic psychotherapy? So, there are three essential features that the psychoanalytic method will be using in interpretation: confrontation or clarification. Okay. Confrontation and or clarification, analysis of the transference, as it gives a glimpse into the child's world as the person comes, and the technical neutrality. These three aspects are dealt very cleverly by the therapist so that they can help the client genuinely by helping them out to resolve all issues at different stages. Clarification is um, this is some request for more information or further elaboration. So, for example, the client said, I feel very afraid of going in the dark. So, the therapist may interfere and say, you said you are scared of dark. So, what makes you think so? For extra information, like they may simply repeat the question that the client is saying and they can ask for clarification. Clarifying and confronting the patient's experience is something which the client, the therapist is preparing for interpretation. Later on, when the session is finished, the therapist may in leisure time, I mean, when he is writing the report, they can interpret the situation by referring to the extra questions that they asked for clarification or they confronted the person while they were explaining. So, for example, if the patient says he feels frustrated, so the client would say, I'm feeling frustrated. So the therapist, just to be clear, The therapist can say, "You said you are feeling depressed and frustrated. What makes you think so?" Much standard technique that they use for asking more questions, which will not interfere in the process of therapy. Also, it will give insight into the inner world of the client. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? No? Okay. Confrontation, when we talk about confrontation in the therapeutic relationship or when having a session with the client, the confrontation would be sounding very hard or as if because they are actually involving tactfully, they are pointing out at the discrepancy or incongruence in the patient's narrative. So when the patient is explaining the situation or is in a flow and suddenly something is not very clear or the patient is not very comfortable, so while expressing their thoughts or beliefs also they will try to hide it and say something different, but while talking to the therapist in a different way, which will make the therapist understand that this area needs to be, which area needs to be talked about later on, and in uh, light of the client's explanation or narrative, the therapist will ask, "What do you mean by such things?" So, interpretation can be made regarding the experience in the therapy or about the relationship with the patient and therapist. That is the term technical neutrality also. Technical neutrality means the psychodynamic therapist or the psychoanalyst will use the techniques of clarification, confrontation, and interpretation in the context of technical neutrality. Technical neutrality is an often misinterpreted construct whereby the psychodynamic therapist will be believing that he or she needs to adopt a stone face or blank screen. It is a now it is not used these days. The therapist is very friendly, and if you have seen the movies also by Shahrukh Khan and all, where they play the role of the main protagonist plays the role of a hero, they are very free and they are friendly with the client. So the therapist doesn't have to maintain a stone face. But earlier, what happened? They thought that they have to maintain a stone face or blank screen. Okay. So technical neutrality is a therapeutic strategy in which the therapist avoids communicating any judgment about the patient's conflict while they are discussing about the situation that the client is having difficulties with. So the therapist will have a strategy which is technical neutrality, that they will understand the conflict in by communicating and judging about the situation that they are discussing. Okay, they will not stay inside the situation that the client is explaining, but stay outside of it and ask questions by confronting and by clarifying the questions, the situation more with questions. Okay. So the distinctive features of psychodynamic technique, again there are features which are listed in psychoanalysis or in psychodynamic therapy or in psychodynamic technique. There are many. So first is focus on affect and expression of emotion. So they focus on, am I clear? Is it audible?
Ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Since there are very few students, it's always this much only in the class, attendance is so low.
Yes, ma'am. The attendance is too low.
Just 5 students. So that is making me think that maybe I'm getting disconnected or something is wrong with my connection, maybe. I hope not. Okay. So there are distinctive features in psychodynamic technique that are talked about in psychoanalytic therapy or psychodynamic therapy. First is focus on feeling. Affect is feeling. Focus on affect and expression of emotion. So they focus when the client is getting when the client is getting emotional while explaining the situation or what they are going through while explaining their belief patterns or what makes them understand the situation in a very negative way. So these are the examples where the therapist will focus on on the emotion and feeling of the client. I had a message from somebody, I believe. Can you read it out? Because I am with the phone. What is it the somebody has written?
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, you
Yes.
can share PPT also from phone, no?
The PPT is
You
not
can.
in my phone. I have a very odd situation here. I had decided I'll use my laptop for the class. So everything was in laptop and the desktop was internet friendly. Today the internet is
Oh,
not
oh,
working, so I was
okay, okay,
trying to
okay.
help myself.
Actually,
I
this is a
prepared.
very important topic, and if PPT available, so it is kind of easy to understand all these things, no? So now,
PPT PPTs are there, but I don't know how to bring it from the desktop to the phone. That is the problem.
okay,
And
okay,
I
ma'am.
prepared the PPT
Ma'am,
with so much
tomorrow,
effort.
if possible, you just share us tomorrow,
Yes,
so we can follow it.
but this
Okay,
topic
ma'am.
will not repeat tomorrow. Tomorrow you will have the block
No,
too.
ma'am, no need to repeat. You just share that PPT to us so we can follow that.
Okay, but meanwhile, if you have any problem in understanding, you can clarify that. You can clarify
Okay.
that like the psychodynamic method by asking questions. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Okay. Actually, I am not from psychology background. I am from education only. So I am facing kind
Okay.
of difficulty to understand the thing.
Most
That is why.
most
No.
ignore
Okay.
you patients are not students are not from psychology background, so it's okay. So the words that you hear you can write down meanwhile when I'm not okay with the PPT connected with the computer.
It's okay,
You
ma'am.
can
It's
just
okay. Can
write down the
continue.
words, okay, so that you will
Okay,
have
okay, ma'am.
also have a mental note.
Okay, ma'am.
I understand the difficulty. That is why I
Okay.
got few minutes late for the class also. I was trying to connect, but it didn't connect. The
Okay, ma'am. You can
PPT.
continue.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you that you said it. Okay. So the distinctive features we were discussing about the psychodynamic technique that the therapist will be using with the client. So they focus on the feelings and emotions of the person, the exploration of attempts to avoid distressing thoughts and feelings. What they do, they try to avoid distressing thoughts which is uncomfortable for the client. They don't ask them uncomfortable questions and which is they can see that the person is not comfortable while answering they feel distressed, that they keep track of. Okay. And then identification of recurring themes and patterns. When you are with the client and you are taking notes of the clients explaining the situation, the experiences, the feelings, the emotions that they are having right now. By recalling or past experience, you will see that they are recurring, they are repeating some themes and patterns. For example, they will always say that this is something which I felt as a child about my father, but not now. I am okay with my father. Father loves me very much. So this is something I felt when I was a kid. Then again, they will say something about the father, about the first job. Maybe they will jump to the first job that they had. Then they would say, no, this is something which I felt that time, but now I'm okay with whatever is the relationship with my father. I'm very happy. So this is about identifying the recurring themes and patterns. Okay. So the discussion of past experience is developmental focus. When you are discussing the past experiences, you are trying to understand the past, on what basis the client has developed such a personality or such a problem, and what can be probed in the client and therapist relationship. So, related to the identification of the reoccurring themes and patterns is like recognizing the past experiences, especially the early experiences of attachment figures. So when there is no secure attachment, what will happen? They will try to hide it. They will not address it properly. They will not mention it maybe. So when you ask about their childhood, for example, there is some childhood trauma that they have. So they will not talk about it because it is so painful for them that they will try to hide it with some un- unnecessary, unimportant, which is not related to the present situation that the client is in. They will try to talk about it, which will not give any insight into the problem that they are discussing. So, in such cases, the past experience or the developmental focus is important when the child is developing what had happened. So, to reach the childhood trauma, they have to ask for the questions, right? So when they are asking for the questions, they will find out, the therapist will find out that there is a situation each time the client is saying about, when I was a small kid, my mother used to drop me at the school gate, but I used to see other mothers entering the gate and dropping their kids and giving a goodbye kiss or something like that, which has made a great impact on the child's mind. But they have come to terms with the situation because of the ego principle, which is dealing with the reality, which is not focusing on the past experiences, which is very painful for them. So they use defense mechanisms to hide their feelings, which was not very pleasant at that time, and they are talking about their, yes, they're talking about their present situation, which has no link to the childhood trauma that should be discussed about. Okay, so they will try to avoid it. So, in such cases, the goal is to help the patient to free themselves from the bonds of past experience. So, the bonding that they have developed with the emotion that they developed, the negative emotion that they developed with the situation and the person also during those childhood days, they need to come to terms with that happily and accept it also, that it was just an incident from my life which has no role to play in my present situation. So, in such cases, they focus on that past experience and they help the patient to free themselves, to liberate themselves from the bond of past experience in order to live more fully in the present. Okay?
Ma'am, I have doubt.
Yes,
One doubt.
please.
Ma'am,
Yes.
actually, when we are asking the child regarding his past experience, asking the client regarding their past experience, they
Yes.
are hiding the thing, but some way they are expressing that feelings, right? And
Yes,
yeah, by expressing that, they are feel relaxed, or
they will
any
not be
other way
relaxed.
they have
No,
to make relax them.
no, they will be very tensed. For example, a therapeutic situation. For example, you are the client and you I'm the therapist. Or, for example, I'm saying
Okay.
we are going to play a situation where you are the client. You are explaining something which is very painful from your past. We'll take the
Hmm.
same example. Your mother used to drop you at the school gate and never entered the school gate, but you expected
Okay.
her to enter the school and be there for you till you are feeling comfortable. Okay, so in such a
Okay.
situation, what happens? You are asking, okay, so you went to the school with your mother who used to drop you at the school. So you would say,
Hmm.
my mother. You'll say your mother. Okay, so did you like your school? What will be your answer?
Uh, if I am not comfortable first few days, like 1 month, 2 month, I am not comfortable in school. I don't like to go school and started crying in the gate only.
Okay, so you didn't like school so much, right? So what
Yes.
happened when you cried? You came
Actually,
back?
one caretaker is there, and
Huh?
she's hold my hand and roaming here and there. Instead of entering into school classroom, she
Mm-hmm.
roaming here and there for half an hour. And after
Mm-hmm.
that, I enter into school and continue my study.
Did that make you happy? Or you
Yes,
wanted
yes.
somebody from your
So that
family to come?
after that, I am feeling happy to enter in the classroom. But from the beginning, I don't want to enter.
Okay, in the beginning, what happened? You didn't like the school because you were scared or you were just not used to the situation?
Maybe I cannot recall properly, but
Okay.
I am not feeling well when I enter. Maybe I scared during that time.
Okay.
After 2 months, I am very much comfortable and enter into school and classroom everything. But for 2 months, I am facing such kind of problem.
Okay. So you're saying that initial months were difficult for you in the school,
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Mm-hmm.
So in initial months, did you cry?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
When you cried, who was there with you? Who consoled you?
No one from my family member, my father and mother, they left me inside the gate and they went house. And during that time, only that caretaker I can remember now also her bonding with me, and she is roaming with me background, playground, and backside of the school everywhere,
Okay.
but I don't want to enter into school, and she is with me only at that time
Okay.
for half
Okay.
an hour. She is
Okay.
always with me.
Okay. So how comfortable you were with playing with this caretaker at home?
No, no, she is the school's
School's
peon.
caretaker? Okay.
MPCS.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. She
Okay
is the
then.
MPCS, and she is very. I am very much comfortable with her
Okay.
for half an hour, and after that she say something me and console me, and I enter into classroom. Then only she will free and she and join her job again, other work.
Okay. So here things are pointing out to two things. That you were feeling comfortable when at school with the caretaker that the school had, not the caretaker from home. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Hmm.
you were
Hmm.
going to a strange situation. You can go through John Bowlby's experiments also, stranger reaction. He
Okay.
has done very good experiments in psychology. The beauty of it is actually the subject that we are studying is we depend on these important studies that are done on the small aspects of human behavior and how people react to it. Based on that, the theories are developed. Okay.
Okay.
So here two things are observed. Each time I'm asking you, you are never saying that you used to run to your parents. You
Yes,
were
ma'am. No,
taking.
no, never, never. They left me in front of the gate,
Yes,
and
yes.
caretaker hold my hand and took me inside the school. I am comfortably going with her.
Okay, okay.
Moving with her.
So the strange situation that we are talking about is very important. So when in a new environment or in a strange situation where you are not very comfortable, how you are responding to the strangers that are in the surrounding or that are with you, who are coming to you physical or entering your physical space maybe, and your reaction to that, and who was it who was supporting your threat or fear or that you were getting from the person who
Mm-hmm.
was protecting you at that time. Okay, so
Yes.
most of the time you said it was the caretaker. No, ma'am, it was the caretaker who used to take me and made me comfortable so that I
Mm.
could go for after 2 months
Yes.
happily. Okay, so this
Oh,
caretaker now becomes very important. So what are the characteristics that the caretaker has? So is there any hidden fear that you had developed and you knew that your parents will not entertain your fear? They wanted you to mm, not cry maybe, or you were not okay with looking like a very fearful child, so you never told them that you are feeling uncomfortable while entering the school and you went about with the caretaker. So these things are not clear. So for probing that, we cannot ask direct questions.
okay.
Hmm. So what
Yes.
will we do? We'll ask indirect questions. Okay, so did you ever feel that you should call out your mommy loudly so that she'll turn back and look at you and it'll make you comfortable? Can you act it out? So we'll talk about that, about the eclectic method that we will be discussing also. We use
Okay.
different methods to make the client comfortable and heal the person from the childhood experiences which are not very helpful or which are very painful. Okay,
Okay.
clear?
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
So this way we keep on asking questions which are not direct, which will trigger
Got
something
it.
in the client.
No, right,
But
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
the questioning is a trick. Otherwise, it would look like गप्पे मार रहे हैं दो बैठ के. Client therapist जो बैठ के गप्पे तो नहीं मार रहे. It is some serious process going on, and it is
Yes.
therapy that the person is giving. So in therapy, the questioning is very important, and how you
Okay.
are framing the questions and how the answer is. You are getting the answers, and is there any trauma that you are triggering? So if at all you are triggering some trauma, some clients start crying in the sessions because they cannot express
I
how.
can ask you one question about our client.
Sorry.
One student. I just want to get clarification regarding one client.
Okay.
Ma'am, actually, one boy, he is studying in standard 8.
Mm-hmm.
And during standard 3 or 4,
Mm-hmm.
he is talking nicely at home. There are two brothers and they are living with their parents, father, mother, and two brothers. He
Okay.
is the elder one.
Okay.
Sorry, younger one. One elder son is there. 2
Okay.
years age gap maybe between two brothers. And
Mm-hmm.
what happened? No one knows. But parents are telling only his father getting angry during COVID time. Uh,
Okay.
he's getting angry with the child.
Okay.
Uh, on that time he is in standard 3 or 4, and he
Mm-hmm.
is very mobile, and his father getting angry, and he maybe slap 2 3 times, maybe like that. But
Okay.
that they are explaining that that was not severe, but after that the
Mm-hmm.
child become totally mute. He don't
Okay.
want to speak anything. He can understand everything, he can do everything, he can study, he can write examinations, he pass out again and again, all classes, but
Okay.
he is not speaking one word.
Okay. What was the age that he developed the first signs of this?
Ma'am, he is maybe age of 7 or 8,
7 or
like
8.
uh,
Okay.
uh, no, ma'am, he is little bit more age maybe,
When he
because
developed the signs.
Yes, yes.
And for how long it
During COVID
continued?
only. During COVID. Now he is in standard 8. And
Okay.
during COVID only, that means in 2021, he
Okay.
got 20 or 21, he got this one.
Okay. Okay.
Age 10 or 11 is.
Okay, what plays actually in our lives? We are not the only ones. We are in a social situation and responding to the situation differently. There are other people in it also. If you remember the circles that separates the spaces of a person from other situations, like first comes family, then school, then church or the temples, and then
Hmm.
like there are different places of social situation where the child is interacting. Okay,
Hmm.
remember that the Bronfen-Bremer, you go through the Google Bronfen-Bremer's division of the just or just type Bronfen-Bremer. Okay,
What, ma'am?
Bron
BRON
Fen
FEN
Bremer. So it will give you,
TREN.
it's not important, but it will show you how the child is slowly getting familiar with different social situation as per the age. Now there are situations also which is influencing our behavior and our personality. It is not the genes only, it is the environment also, that we know, right? So when we
Oh.
are talking about the environment, what kind of environment was there when the child was growing up? There was a crisis during COVID. Okay, it was a very stressful situation, not only for the child but also for the parents.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am. Hmm.
so and it was such a situation where nobody was trained, nobody was told how to react in such a situation. So, as individuals, the parents were also struggling with the situation, which was very stressful for them. Okay,
Hmm.
rough and run I used because as the child grows, depending on its comfort level, the child is introduced to the different social institutions. First,
Okay.
they will go to the school. For example, if you look at the books that are taught in the schools, it starts with this is my hand, this is my leg. Okay, so it shows the body parts first. Then it introduces the child to the parents. This is my father, this is my
Hmm.
brother.
Yes, yes.
Then it goes a little further and they teach about this is my school, this is my this is a temple. Then they teach about different things in a bigger circle.
Hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what happens? These situations have their important role to play in the child's life. So, any change in the situation, or any variation in the situation, or any crisis in this situation will have a role to play in the development of the child. So, depends on the child's developmental period again. So, if the child is in the exact developmental period where the child is supposed to go out and study in the school, it becomes home study. For example, they are just exposed to the home environment, and school
Yes.
also becomes home. Okay, so they
Hmm.
have the, sorry?
No, ma'am.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so
One.
the parents are not familiar with the homeschooling. So the online teaching, all that suddenly became a rule of the school.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
in such a situation, the parents also didn't know how to handle that situation and also make the child the perfect child, because all the parents want to make the child perfect child. Hence, that is the problem with every household, right? So
Hmm.
what?
Yes. Yes.
So they were dealing with their anxiety issues. So here we are not referring to the child as client only. Here the parents, family, or the parents and the family also become have gone through such a situation which was maybe not correct how they dealt with it or how the child was dealt in such a crisis situation, and maybe that has made the child quiet because they didn't discuss it openly, or the child was not allowed to express it properly, or the child saw the parents very stressed and didn't know how to react because everybody wants to help in the family, everybody. Even the child also tries to help the parents and the elders in the family, okay?
Okay.
Right? So, in such a
Uh,
situation, we cannot point out to the fact that the child has become quiet. So, it made the decision to stay quiet so that he can contribute something to the situation and feel comfortable. Right?
mm,
Could be. I'm saying could be because we don't have the real person here. We don't have the situation in real situation here, real person to answer that. So we're just assuming that maybe the child was thinking that if I keep quiet, there will be more peace at home and I will not be targeted. Okay.
okay.
So in such a situation, everybody is trying to make everybody happy and comfortable. So the child's small contribution, the child thinks that maybe if I become
Mm.
quiet, it will be very helpful for the parents to deal with the other crisis at home. Something like that could be the thought process. So you will know only when you ask the child when he
Mm.
comes for the session, okay?
But
But
when
to
we are asking questions to the child, he is not answering anything. He is totally mute. He can understand everything. So I ask him something to write. Okay.
yes, uh-huh.
About his family members and about his parents. One word answer. I am asking question and he is
Okay,
answering. Okay. But when I
okay,
ask about
okay.
his father and mother, he don't want to answer. I ask him simple questions. He can answer, but he don't want to answer about his father and mother. He answer
So in
about
such
his
cases,
cousin. He answer about his brother. He
uh-huh.
answers everything, but he don't want to answer. He didn't write anything regarding his father. Whenever I ask any question about his father, he just stop his pen.
Okay, then there is the issue of the father, maybe,
Yes,
right?
yes, ma'am.
You feel
With
that.
to
So
identify
when
that one only, I am trying to ask questions like that only.
you
In
feel that,
initial
okay,
stage, first session or
okay,
second session, I just ask him questions like that.
okay, okay,
But after that, I hand over the case to psychologist ma'am. So,
okay,
but after 2 months, they stopped to come to our CRC. So I still I remember that child whether he is able to answer or not.
okay,
Matlab, speak or not. Okay, ma'am,
okay.
you can.
Def- Okay, definitely there is a pattern then that the child is showing. Each time the questions are about the father, he is trying to avoid that, right? So we
Yes,
talked
yes,
about
ma'am.
different methods, open-ended questions or closed questions, how the questions should be formed, and declarative or informative answers they have to give, or they will just say that this is how I was dealing with the situation. So it will not come from the client or the child in such a straight manner. So
Hmm.
accordingly, you
Hmm.
have to split the questions. If it is one question only, you have to split the question into 10 questions maybe, so that you'll get your answer finally. For example, the same question you will ask. So, do you talk to your father? How was it today in the morning? What father was doing when you woke up? So this way you will go. Okay.
Oh, oh, okay, 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 ma'am.
Okay.
I,
Are you
I,
getting my
I
point?
I get your point. Yes, yes, ma'am. I will try.
Okay. So don't
Thank you.
ask direct questions. You go
Hmm.
roundabout so that you will interpret. That is why it is so important. Such importance is given to interpretation of the session. So when you are
Okay.
interpreting the session, you will understand that these are the things that the child has to. You are planning your next session again, right? So you will
Yes,
be
ma'am.
planning.
Yes,
So what exactly? It is not, as I was saying, it is not just talking. It is a systematic way of asking questions and getting answers with the
ma'am.
intention of helping the client to overcome the problem areas of their life. Okay,
Yes.
so in such a situation, what you will do, you will plan the next session also. It is not gappe sappe.
Okay.
Some
Okay.
people equate it. So you have to have your plan ready. You have to have your questions ready and your observation if there was any, and if you interpreted something and you wanted more clarification about some situation, that also you have to look into. So there are many things that you will be looking into after the session. Okay, that is why these terms, confrontation or declaration or self disclosure, for example, how much you should say about yourself that the child will trust you. So for example, you can say, even I was very scared of my father. I never went where he was sitting. The area, I never went to the area where he was having his breakfast or tea. He is the most lovable man I know, but self contradicting statements they will give. Okay. So from that also you will understand this is the problem area. Okay. So the next session will be addressing these issues. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Got, ma'am. Got. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So, to avoid distressing thoughts and feelings, what has to be done? People, to a great extent, whether knowingly or unknowingly, they try to avoid aspects of experience that is troubling them. You would, for example, you fell down in front of the college gate on the first day of your college. You don't want others to know and make fun of you. So you will avoid that topic completely, or you will try to forget that. So there is a constant attempt to make you comfortable or to feel comfortable. You are creating situations where you are not feeling any lesser than others that are in your immediate environment. Okay. So there is one more thing, identification of recurrent themes and patterns I was telling you. So you can identify where exactly the client is having problems and what are the things that the child is repeating. For example, you kept on saying, no, no, I kept on feeling comfortable with the assistance of the school helper. So you were going back to the school helper more than your parents. So is it possible that parents were not giving you the emotional support when you were a kid and then didn't know how to handle the situation where you were feeling very scared or fearful of the school situation? Okay, it could be that also. Or maybe you knew they will be angry with me, saying that you cannot adjust with such a situation. All the children have to go through this. Why you are crying? Something like that. So it could be anything. We don't know. But we will look at the pattern of response, what the client is saying repeatedly, or what are the recurrent themes or patterns that are appearing in the interview or in the conversation. Okay. So, discussing the past experience, as you are discussing the past experience, for example, we took that example. So, discussion of past experience related to the developmental focus is also important. Focus on interpersonal relations is also important. Focus on the therapeutic relationship is important. Exploring the life of fantasy, what they are thinking to do when given a chance, that is also important, which will give ideas about their future plans or what they expect of the future, so that when you are suggesting, for example, you are not able to, you are not supposed to suggest, but if at all there is some suggestion that they ask you for, you are able to give it which is in line with their future plan. Okay. Then there is this insight psychotherapy or interpersonal psychotherapy. Any questions?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay. Psychotherapy or interpersonal psychotherapy, it started giving importance to the individual person. Earlier, it was giving importance to many things, but here it will give insight into, for example, insight therapy is the umbrella term actually. It includes everything. that would describe a group of different therapy techniques that have some characteristics similar to the theory and thought of other theories also. Okay, so insight therapy will assumes that a person's behavior, a person's thought and emotion becomes disordered because the individual does not understand what is motivating him, especially when a conflict develops between the person's need and his drives. When there is a conflict situation between the drive or need that he is not aware of which one he likes more. For example, you will ask, will you go for this JE test or some other test? So he is not clear maybe. Okay, so in such a situation, you will depend on other therapeutic theories or intervention processes that has been used and tested and which is evidence based that it will help in understanding the conflicting feeling that the person is going through, and you can help the person to think clearly regarding the career choices. Okay, then comes ego and superego that we developed, we understood. Will not repeat that again, but since it was very good that you asked the question, so we'll take the same example in explaining what we are discussing now. Okay, so free association. When, for example, we understand the parents were not very comfortable and they didn't handle the situation properly during COVID. Oh, I'm just saying, we are assuming this situation because we don't know the real situation, okay? It has no resemblance to any real situation. But this is what we assume, that the parents were not capable enough to handle the situation and make the child comfortable. So the child has decided to be comfortable by staying quiet. Okay, in such a situation, how you will know that it is the, again, there are many members in the family, so who was it who is responsible for the child's silence? So you will ask questions again, not direct questions but indirect questions. So there are indirect method of questioning. You will develop a questionnaire which you will clearly verify that if it is triggering for the child or will it give you the valuable information or not. Okay. In such a situation, we use free association. Free association means you will say the word, and the first word that comes to the client's mind, they will reproduce it. Okay. So the raising of repressed conflicts through different psychoanalytic techniques, which is called free association, will be used in understanding the real problem. So you will ask tree, the child will say green. The computer, technology, father, angry. Then you will say some other random things. Then again, something. Then the answer will be something. So accordingly, you will try to analyze the situation. Okay, when the child was asked father, he said angry. So something to do with the father's anger, right? Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so free association is a method which is during a session we take notes about the client's thinking and how they, even if they're trying to repress it, it is so quick. You have to respond quickly. So it is so quick that they can never think of any false word normally. Okay, and dream analysis is also one method that the psychoanalytic method uses to understand. So when he's talking about dream, there are two contents psychoanalysis has talked, Freud has talked about, the manifest content and latent content. Do you remember this, or I need to explain it?
Can you explain, ma'am?
Okay, there are two. You are seeing, we all see dreams, right? So some dreams are very clear, which is like a story. Suddenly you see a dream, sometimes you see a dream which doesn't make any sense. Then you keep asking, I suddenly saw a dream, I don't know why it came to my mind, because I was not thinking about it. So it has some latent content, and the content is not acceptable to you or to others, maybe. That is why it has come in a very hidden format. So latent contents are also there in dream. So Freud has talked about manifest content and latent content. Okay. So dream analysis is also one method of understanding the behavior and belief patterns and emotions, everything that the person is going through, and how to help them. Then transference. Transference is the patient's response to the psychoanalyst, which is not. Is there any question? Can you help me? Because I am on phone, I cannot see. Something is wrong with my Wi-Fi today. I'm so sorry. Okay. Any question? Somebody write? Please let me know. So, transference is one more ingredient in psychoanalysis. That is, a patient's or client's response to the analyst, which is not keeping with the psychotherapist and the patient relationship, but it resembles the patient's people that they were in the family, in the patient's family, that resembles. So, for example, the therapist's behavior will resemble the father's behavior so much that the client will identify the therapist with the father figure that he has at home. Okay? And analysis of difference. For example, it can provide a very clear picture when we talk about analysis of difference. When you are having a therapy session with the client, you are analyzing the defense mechanism that they are using. It can provide the psychoanalyst or the therapist with a very clear picture of some of the conflicts that the client is going through. Okay, what is the conflict? So you have found out that the father figure is the conflict. And now you, for example, I'm saying, okay, so this will provide you with a clear picture of the patient's conflict that they are going through in the developmental stage. It is not now actually, it started during childhood. So you are going back in the developmental stage. That is why these developmental stages are also important to study. The oral stage, anal stage that you are studying is important because we are going back in time, going back and forth in time to understand the situation or the life of the client, how they dealt with each situation, and what was the conflicting situation which they didn't handle properly. Hence, the problem has come up. Okay. Then there is this analysis of difference. That is again a technique in analysis of difference, which defense mechanism they are using, why they are using, and in what form they are using, and what is the relevance of using such a defense mechanism. All that becomes important because you are trying to understand the problematic behavior and trying to help the client in coming to terms with the reality principle. That is, the ego will be feeling comfortable with the situation, and they will not have any situation which will be bringing in unpleasant emotion or belief or feeling. Then comes Jung's psychology, which came after Sigmund Freud's theoretical proposition about. There is so much. You have 4 blocks in this. Okay. So I have 4 days with you. We'll try to finish 4 blocks in 4 days. Right? This is how it is, right? Anyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it is not possible to finish all the blocks and all the points. I would love to clarify your doubts on some day, maybe the last day or something, or you are supposed to, everything is in the book and it is so good. The book is very good. So you can understand also. I request you all to go through the book so that you will remember all the important points regarding the therapeutic intervention in clinical psychology. Because why we are saying intervention? Because in intervention you are trying to help the client, because they will not come on their own. Mostly they will not come on their own if they are serious clients. Okay, so they will be brought by somebody from their family, or friend will bring them, or they will, when they are coming, they are not serious mentally ill persons. SMI we call, seriously mentally ill. Okay. So in such cases, the approach will be different. You cannot ask the same type of questions to milder problems, the way you will be asking the major problems that people have, like the serious mental illnesses. People will not give any direct answer, or indirectly questions also they will be avoiding. So the questioning, how you are framing it and how you are asking it, is very important. Okay. So Jung has said that there are three levels of consciousness: the conscious portion, which we all are conscious about, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Okay. We are talking about insight therapy. So there is this existential therapy, which is another insight therapy. This is based on the philosophical theory of existentialism. The important component of this existential theory is that it is dealing with life themes. It deals with themes instead of techniques. We are not depending on any techniques to use in the therapeutic intervention. Okay, so with existential therapy, the focus is not on techniques but existential themes. And how you can apply these themes to the patient. That is all that we focus on in existential therapy, which is again um, which is included in the insight therapy. Okay. And in this existential therapy, patients discover that they are not living their lives to the full potential. Normally, you are, if I ask you, are you living your life to the full potential? What will be your answer? Yes or no? Are you all living your life to the full potential? Or there is more potential which is at sleeping condition which is not being used by you? Yes or no? Sorry? Be a little clear. None of us are using our potential to the maximum, right? So, this existential therapy is all those who are not living their life to full potential. They will learn what to do, what they must do, or what they should be doing to realize their full potential. Because it doesn't only deal with ill patients, mentally ill patients, it also is for normal people and help them to use the maximum potential for their own benefit. Okay. Then there comes person centered therapy. Person centered therapy is a non directive therapy again. We call it client centered therapy. It is focused on the person. It is by Carl Rogers. Rogers person centered therapy or client centered therapy, we call it. So, it, has 4 stages. Rogers therapy has 4 stages: developmental stage, the non-directive stage, the client-centered stage, and the person-centered stage. The client-centered therapy or Rogers therapy looks at assumptions made about human nature and how people can try to understand these assumptions. All these 4 assumptions that we have made, it is based on 4 stages. It takes into account all these assumptions that we make about human behavior, human nature, and human behavior, and how people can try to understand these assumptions. You are trying to make them understand on what basis you are making these assumptions and what makes you think that this needs to be changed. And when you are changing, what kind of changes you are bringing in the client. It has to be always a suggestion only. You cannot give strict instructions. You are there as a guide. In therapy, what happens? It is the person's life they are dealing with. You are not the one who is dealing with. So you cannot tell your perspective what they should be doing. You just have to guide them, which they find is the best option. Then adjust to that and maintain that and make changes in their life. Okay? Clear? Am I clear?
Yes.
That is why it was so important a therapy as a therapy. People said therapy became very popular actually because, like other humanistic therapists, Rogers also believed that people should be responsible for themselves. No one is responsible. We cannot blame others and say that it was actually this situation in my life which has brought me down. Otherwise, I would have become the number one in all that I am doing. Okay, so it takes the person into account as the central person, central in the situation, and it believes that people have to take the responsibility for themselves, whether good or bad. Even when they are in trouble situations, they cannot disown the situation, saying that it was not my responsibility, so it is somebody else's doing in my life, because it is their life. They have to take responsibility for that situation. So they become fully functioning individuals instead of complaining about their problems. Okay, for that you are helping as a therapist. To the person is getting notes from you about the situations that he is maybe not very aware of, and he is trying to change the situations by unlearning the habitual behavior, and adjusting and adapting new situations. Okay. So the components of the ideal therapeutic climate in a client-centered therapy or person-centered therapy would be genuineness from the therapist. The therapist has to be very genuine while giving feedbacks about the person's reaction in the situations that the person is finding troublesome, and they have to be very genuine in giving unconditional positive regard for the client. Whatever they say or they do, or if they are confessing, whether it is positive or negative, whether it is the right thing or the wrong thing, you have to have unconditional positive regard for the client. Okay, and there should be empathy for the client. These are the 3 ideal therapeutic climates that have to be there in the person centered therapy. Okay. Then there are behavior therapies also. Okay. I hope I'm not getting disconnected in between. Is that too much? That is why you people are keeping silent. Any questions that you have in mind, you can ask. Or I'll continue because we have to finish this portion. Okay. So when you are talking about different therapeutic models or behavior modalities of individuals which you are using, in which you are using these therapeutic intervention processes. So there are behavior therapies also. So in insight therapy that we discussed, symptoms were reflecting the underlying problem. In behavior therapies, the symptoms are the problems. Clear? So there are three important assumptions in behavior therapy. The problematic behavior is a product of learning. Learning behavior can be unlearned. Problematic learned behavior can be extinguished over time. For example, there is something which you are not liking in your behavior. You want to change it. You can unlearn the behavior and adapt to a new situation where the behavior is acceptable to you, and then learn it and relearn it so that it becomes a habit with you and it becomes a permanent behavior. And it can be unlearned also, which you don't like in your behavior. This is normally used to treat phobias and anxiety disorders. While you are dealing with clients, you will come across phobic patients also. So, in such cases, the normal phobia that we talk about is some absurd reaction to a situation which is fear inducing, but not so much that the way the client is behaving, should be behaving. In such a situation, you are using these behavior therapies, which are which is a wrong behavior the person has used. Each time, for example, each time you go on an escalator or you use a lift, you feel very fearful. You're petrified of going in a flight, or maybe you have some fear which is absurd, which has no basis at all. If you look at the statistical data also, no statistics would say that this is a dangerous situation. Okay, so in such situations, what happens? You can use the behavior techniques that you have studied in Jacob's. Have you studied general psychology, the conditioning, Pavlovian dog and the Skinnerian pigeon? Remember those as stories, maybe? The
Ma'am,
best.
dog and food, bell, dog and bell, classical
Yes.
condition.
Yes. So what happens? The dog is being trained to learn new kind of behavior by using incentives, right? So here also by using, yes, and in Skinnerian method, the behavior is emitted first. The behavior is shown, then the incentive comes. Here the incentive comes, then the dog behaves. Okay, so using these techniques taken from behavioral school, we are using them on human behavior to learn and unlearn different types of undesirable behavior, which the therapist uses as techniques, and the client is given relief from the fearful situation. If we are talking about phobia, or if it is anxiety provoking situation, we are getting relief by using by going to the client and using the new methods of learning. Okay, that was the so the technique that follows a four-step process in which the therapeutic approaches are based on the behavior approaches, or the behavioral therapeutic approaches are systematic desensitization, aversion therapy, social skills training, and systemic desensitization. I'll take one example out of these four and give you how it is done. Okay, you have seen drug de-addiction centers or alcoholic groups, or places where alcoholic people are taken and they are helped to get rid of the addiction. Do you know that such centers exist?
Yes, ma'am, I know.
Okay,
Yes,
so what they
teacher.
do? So they are using these techniques actually, which are helping them to get rid of the wrong addiction or the wrong type of behavior that they are engaged in, and they are using new ways of behavior, new ways of life where the addiction problem is not there anymore. They are taken to rehabilitation centers, then they are brought to the mainstream. Okay, so what they do, they use aversion therapy, for example. Out of these four that I used, systemic desensitization, aversion, social skills training, or systemic desensitization. I'm taking aversion therapy as an example. In such cases, they give them the alcohol, but it is used with such a substance that they will be throwing up. Each time they take the alcohol, they will be throwing up. They are given medicines for that. So they will develop a very negative feeling for alcohol, which they used to like so much. They will not want to take it. So that is a situation they can be used as a helpful technique of getting rid of alcoholism. Or systemic desensitization. Systematic desensitization is, for example, a child is very fearful of going by the lift. So each time they have to go and fetch something, a family is staying in a 6 or 7 story building. So they cannot send the child through the staircase 6, 7 times for tuition, for school, or for other things. 6, 7 times is too much, and they will be weak and their leg will be paining. So they have to depend on the lift. But the child is so fearful, he is not using the lift. So here, what happens? You desensitize them systematically. You desensitize them by showing them that nothing will happen if you are using it, and see how safe it is. So for that, you have to repeatedly expose them to the situation where such a situation arises. The child will realize that my fears are baseless, and slowly they will go with the child, and slowly they will withdraw from the situation. Only the child goes alone by entering the lift and comes back. So this way they become very acceptable to the technique becomes acceptable to the child, and slowly he will realize that my fears are baseless, and they will continue with the use of lifts. Okay, that's all. Then comes gestalt therapy. We'll use this just to, okay. Then there is this gestalt therapy also, which believes that the individual is not is some is the sum total of its different parts. So as a whole, the individual is not seen. The different parts are also important. So that is the rule Gestalt theory follows. And then there is this interpersonal psychotherapy. Interpersonal psychotherapy will not be effective in all cases, but there are several years of careful study which has shown that interpersonal therapy is equally effective in the short treatment of depression as antidepressant medication therapy. Okay? When antidepressant medication therapy is given, interpersonal therapy can also be combined and can be given in combination with the medication, and it is very helpful also, it has been observed. Okay, and the characteristics of interpersonal psychotherapy are different. So, as in CBT, the therapist discusses the cognitive distortions. In CBT, what happens? The cognitive distortions are discussed. So, here also, in interpersonal therapy, the therapist will not specifically seek out the maladaptive pattern of thinking, the difficult or uh, difficulty inducing pattern of behavior is not studied, nor that there are specific problems that they are dealing. Just because it is a problem that they are using in understanding their behavior, it will be stopped in the behavior, and they will replace it with more acceptable form of behavior. Okay. So in interpersonal therapy, the different techniques are used, which is directive and non-directive exploration, clarification again, then encourage the expression of feelings or affect, communication analysis. Then there is this therapeutic relationship. How in therapeutic relationship in interpersonal therapy, how people communicate with the therapist can be taken as a model. How they relate to others in their lives. That is also very important. So it is very useful to reflect on this interaction. Okay. Time is up. Is that all for today? What is the time?
Ma'am, actually, it is not sufficient. Actually, we have a 1 hour only.
You have only 1 hour class.
Actually, 2 hour class. Actually, we
Yes.
have completed the 1 hour.
You completed 1 hour. You came late.
No, actually, ma'am, we have starting our class on 6 o'clock to the 7 o'clock. So
We
eight
didn't.
o'clock maybe.
We started at
Actually,
five
sorry.
two or 5:03 maybe. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. We started five
Actually,
two.
actually, ma'am, yes, it's
Yes.
actually my fault,
Maybe
ma'am.
maybe you joined late. Okay.
Uh,
Not a problem. You go through
Actually,
the
my
book.
fault.
Yes, you joined late maybe. You didn't know the time maybe, or something from your side has happened. We started the class 3 4 minutes late only. I had an issue, so I took the class from my mobile. Okay.
Actually, sorry, ma'am. Actually, it's my fault.
Yes. So you note down the time so that you are not late for the class.
Okay, ma'am.
And
Ma'am,
the
can I
teacher.
can I contact with you, ma'am?
Sorry.
Actually, can I contact with us because having some of the problem and issue on this chapter and this book, so maybe we have
Yes.
the problem that can be okay. So
Yes, you
can I
can
know about
clarify
your
your
contact
doubts.
now?
Yes, you can clarify your doubts also. The problem is, there is so much in your classes. This is supposed to be a self-study course, if you agree, right? Others?
Yes, ma'am. And
So these are
actually,
all. Uh, I'm in a hurry to understand everything and make you understand also. I have to understand how you people are grasping the concepts that I am discussing in the class, because it is too less a time. Only 2 hours we cannot cover a full course. I understand your situation. Okay, so
Ma'am,
you can clarify your
in
doubts.
working days, can we start class at 5:30?
5:30, 5:30 to 7.
No, 5:30 to 7:30.
5 to 7:30.
Actually, my office time is 5 only. So after it will
Okay.
take half an hour to enter into home. So on the way, I cannot listen. Every time I'm facing some kind of problem. So if possible, just
Okay.
skip 15 minutes. Within 15 minutes, I will be at home. So 5:15 also you can start. I
5:30 to
can join.
7:30 will be a. It will be a problem for me for health reasons, actually. I didn't
Okay,
want to
okay,
say you all, but I have a nurse who leaves at 7:30. So I have to finish all my
okay,
work
okay, okay.
by 7:30. So
It's
7 to
okay.
7:30 is the nurse time. I'm so sorry you are having problems, but I
It's
cannot
okay. It's
also.
okay. No problem. No
You can
problem,
just
ma'am.
struggle.
But I will join after 5:15. After 15 minutes in working days, not Saturday, Sunday. And today also I
Okay.
have holiday. So only
Okay.
last day maybe I will face problem. No problem. I will manage, ma'am.
I'm so sorry because the timing is also
No
not
problem,
very
ma'am.
suitable
No
for
problem.
me.
Thank you.
Hmm. But
No
there is
problem.
so
It's
much to
okay.
cover. You study this portion on your own because block 2, block 3, block 4, three more blocks are there to complete. I understand the pressure that you all are having at your different personal situations. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
I'm sorry,
So
but
can I ask you, ma'am?
yes, ask.
Ma'am, sometimes we have going to be a confusion in this chapter and in this book. So, can you give your contact number whenever we have a
Yes, yes,
problem? I and
yes,
we
yes,
contact with
yes,
you.
yes, yes.
So,
You can write
can
on my number.
okay,
Not a problem. 993
yes,
71
71
69
69
674.
674
Yes,
9937169674.
yes, that's my number.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
If you have any
And
doubts, you can clarify your doubts. But don't come late to the class and say that you didn't understand. Because I was also taken aback when you said the class started at 5:30 or 6. 6 you said maybe. Okay. Come to the class on time.
okay, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Your
Yes,
name
ma'am.
is Vikash. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
But actually, I like to say something like your explanation is very good, ma'am. Actually, it's mad admire thing.
okay. Thank you so much. But there is so much to teach. I cannot explain all the concepts that I have to explain. So you have to bear with that and you have to go through the book thoroughly. No one can
Yes,
teach
ma'am.
in one day, in 2 hours, actually, the whole system that you have. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
We are here just to clear your doubts only. If I
Yes,
am
ma'am.
correct, again, I'll have to clarify that with IGNOU office. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Bye, all. You all have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Hello. Maybe.